Earnestly podcast here once again. DT Danny Thompson with us. What's up, bud?
I mean, 2 times in less than a year. I mean, I feel special.
Yeah, we haven't gone. I'm telling you, that's crazy, right?
I, I know. We
Go.
had just talked. We just talked when Jimmy Butler and the boys were struggling to get into the playoffs, and now it's final season. Jimmy Butler and the boys are still in the playoffs.
Yeah, we spoke. What drew the play-in? They lost to Atlanta, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
because I was in Atlanta because we were talking about if Miami lost, if Atlanta lost, I was going to Phillips because I was at Black Sports Symposium. Like, okay,
right.
I'm going to the Hawks game on Friday night. No, Jimmy Butler and the boys blew the game at home and forced my Friday night to be in a hotel
Right.
watching the Heat play
Yeah.
from CNN Center. So like, it is what it is.
The Heat were literally 3 minutes from missing the playoffs entirely in Chicago that Friday, and then all of a sudden we talk again. They're in the NBA Finals. It's unbelievable how this story's played out. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, and people think, oh, it's the underdog Miami Heat. This team was in the conference finals last year.
Yep.
This is not some like some dodgeball, true underdog story. This is not, this isn't average Joe's making the finals. This team was in the conference finals last year and been to the Eastern Conference Finals, 3 of the last 4 years? Come on. This
Yeah.
is not some underdog team.
No, I'm with you on that. And I did say even when they got in the playoffs that they'll be the team that they're that 8 seed that you don't want to play. Like I didn't look, I didn't think they beat Milwaukee or Boston, but they're a team that they want to play that early. Like they'll push them to 6 or 7 games maybe, but I didn't think they win the entire damn East. I mean that's just insane to me. Still,
Yeah.
as a fan too, I'm still shocked.
Yeah, I think, and I think when you look at the road, you went through Milwaukee, you go through New York, you go through Boston, you literally go through the two best teams. You went through every single high seeded team that you need to get to the conference finals.
Yeah.
They played everybody they were supposed to,
Hmm.
and they beat everybody they're supposed to. Whatever circumstance you want to call it, the Miami Heat or the NBA Finals on Thursday night, and you just have to like it or just watch it anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you what. Like one of the things I keep thinking about when it comes to this finals now is legacy plays. Like Jokic about to make a big play for legacy wise. He wins his first ring. Butler as well too. I'm looking at one guy though is Eric Spoelstra. Like I don't know where you have him ranked all time and all this stuff, and I think he's the best coach in basketball right now. Personally, in my opinion, I've been saying for a couple of years now. But imagine this Heat team somehow pull up this upset because this would be the biggest upset in NBA Finals history. First off, if it does happen, um, I couldn't. You have to consider top five at this point for Spoelstra.
I mean, you're thinking what? Pat? You're thinking
You're thinking Pat,
Pop,
Phil, Pop. I mean,
Phil.
you still put Red in there? Is Red still in that top five discussion?
I mean,
Out of
Red's
respect,
got Red's got 812 championships. No matter how many
right?
teams are in the league, it's
Right.
still 812 championships. So you got to put that on there. And then you're really talking about, in fifth place, you're talking Spo, you're talking Steve Kerr. I'm
Chuck
Chuck.
Daly.
I was about to say Chuck. You got to talk Chuck Daly at some point in this conversation. And there are some great coaches, but no, Eric Spoelstra. Listen, it's funny. You read the stories about LeBron James and his crew or other players try to get Eric Spoelstra fired, but Pat Riley's like, no, this is my guy, and you don't run nothing here.
Right.
The one thing about Eric Spoelstra that people don't talk about is Eric Spoelstra is one of the best adjustment coaches in the NBA.
Yeah.
Whether it be X's and O's, whether it be personnel decisions, whether it be just giving guys opportunities. And the thing about Heat culture is he is the representation of it. This is his ship. Jimmy Butler is a star player, but at the end of the day, Jimmy Butler falls line behind Eric Spoelstra and Pat Riley. And so, since Eric Spoelstra has full control of what he does between Jimmy Butler and Udonis Haslem having his back in that locker room, that's where the success really comes from. Because EJ, we between both of us, I think we've watched 910 years of NBA basketball between both of us in our age group.
And then some.
What team have you ever seen to have the diversity the Heat have had when it comes to how their roster is constructed or where these players have come from? The Heat have more undrafted free agents in the NBA Finals than any team I can ever think of. That was not back in the 60s. Like, they took everybody's players that were thrown away, couldn't find homes, they were just ill fits, and brought them together and turned them into pieces. And I love what Jimmy Butler said. I think it was yesterday in the media conference yesterday when he was speaking about in Denver. He said these guys aren't role players; they're teammates.
Yeah.
Everybody plays a particular job, and when somebody goes down, the next man comes up. But then he says this. He says, "But when that person comes back, there's no complaining. There's no egos. Everybody shifts back to where they're supposed to." And that's superly important.
Yeah.
Because as Tyler Hero returns for game 3, which Heat fans know that there's 20 points a game right there, and we all wonder, the last time, EJ, can you remember a guard that came back in the middle of the finals was Jameer Nelson?
Yeah, in the 2009 finals, right?
Yeah, and Stan Van Gundy, former Heat head coach, made the inevitable mistake of throwing Jameer Nelson back into a series in game 1 where he hadn't played and took the momentum away after what Ray Froston had did.
Correct.
So it's going to be interesting to see how Spo, who said, hey, Tyler's got to do a whole bunch of things before he hits that basketball court, because you're not about to mess up this chemistry. All right. The Heat have everything going for them right now, and Tyler Hero could derail it or Tyler Hero could enhance it. But Eric Spoelstra's smart enough to know how to make that work.
Yeah. And this has kind of been the format really since the post LeBron years too. Like this whole using the G League as a way to build roster build. This has been the format for the last 8-9 years. Really, it's nothing new. It's actually hit pay dirt finally when you get Jimmy and other guys, and you build around that, and had a good draft to get Bam and all that, and it's been the most successful last 6-7 years now.
Yeah, Miami and Toronto have the two best G League teams in the last 10 years.
Right.
What Miami's done, what Toronto has done. What has happened with both those teams? They've won either won championships or gotten the finals.
Right.
But it also proves that everybody's formula to make the NBA finals and win NBA championships are completely different based on the type of coaching and personnel you have on the roster.
Yeah, I agree. No, I agree. And I think Spo, and for the record, I've been saying this for years now, and I'm gonna continue saying it. Look, Pat Riley deserves all the flowers. Pat Riley should have a statue outside Kasai Center, whatever the hell it's called these days, and all that. But that being said, this whole idea of Pat Riley being the reason they're here now is that should have sailed years ago. All this, and especially for the last 6, 7, 8 years, this is all Spoelstra. Pat Riley to me is right now is a gatekeeper at this point.
Pat Riley's there to bring it. Pat Riley's there to show up the day somebody comes to the town to put the rings on the table and said, "This is what you're walking into."
He goes big whale hunting. He's big whale hunting. That's what he does.
Yeah, but, I mean, if Spo needs a big whale, he's the one that who does it.
Right. But in terms of the construction, roster construction, and the X's and O's and all that stuff, that's all Spoelstra, man. I think it's time that people need to recognize that. Yes, Pat Riley's great. He's had his time. He's definitely all time great, all that. But this ship has now been run by Spoelstra for a good while now.
And not only is this ship ran by Eric Spoelstra, this ship is sailing, thriving, and looking gorgeous every single day.
Absolutely.
And what Spoelstra doesn't get credit for is Spoelstra can really coach. That's the thing. He can really, really coach.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to make this final series so interesting, because Eric Spoelstra doesn't get enough credit, and neither does Mike Malone either.
No.
Neither one of these coaches in the finals get the respect they get.
Mm-hmm.
They should get.
No, I agree. Complicated question here for me. Well, for me anyway. I don't know, if you do a rankings every year with players where you rank your top 20, 10, whatever players in the league. I find Jimmy Butler very complicated because, obviously the narrative about, he's really good during the season, of course, and then the playoffs come around and he ratchets up to another level. So I think entering this year, I think I had Butler, number 8 coming to the year. He made second All NBA this season. So you obviously can't skate. You can't necessarily skate and make All NBA team. I mean, you got to do some work, which he did. But then he ratchets up a whole other level now in the playoffs. We got a lot of changes in the league now with players. I know my top 10 coming into this year is going to definitely drastically change now. Jokic will probably number 1, number 2, 1A, 1B, whatever with Giannis. KD was number 2 for me this year. He's going to drop my list. Jimmy Butler's complicated because I feel like he should be a top 5 player, but maybe he's not, but maybe he is. I don't know. Where do you put Butler now?
I mean, he's in the top 10.
Definitely top 10, yeah.
I think when you say the best players in the league, right? one of the things Jimmy Butler will never have outside of the steal category, which he's basically literally, he already has stock, he already owns the place. He's always going to be a top 5 in steals every year.
Yeah.
The one thing Jimmy Butler is never in outside of steals is the fact that he's not going to be one of the league leaders in scoring. He's not going to be one of the league leaders in field goal percentage or 3-point percentage or rebounds or assists or those things. So you have to be able to know basketball to know the value of Jimmy Butler.
Yeah.
Because that becomes a question, EJ, when it comes to people who watch games or people who read stats and people who watch basketball. That's where the real problem comes into this, right? Mm-hmm. Because people look at these players, oh, Jimmy Butler is 25, 5, and 2 steals. That's not better than, Damian Lillard averaging 32 points and 8 assists a game, right? That's 32 points on 40% 3-point shooting. But if you watch what Jimmy Butler does, if you watch a full game what Jimmy Butler does, the different ways he affects games, or even watch the playoffs. When Jimmy's not scoring, he's getting others involved. Him being on the court alone makes the game easier for others. So those things you can't find in the stat sheet. The same way when you look at Draymond Green, you see Draymond Green's a terrible shooter, but do you know the type of attention Draymond Green provides on both defense and the things he does handling the basketball and passing the basketball for the Splash Brothers or setting screens? That stuff is just as important as Steph Curry hitting a 35-footer.
Yeah.
Because without that screen being set, Steph Curry's not open. That 0.1 of a second he needs to get that shot off to go in. And in Jimmy Butler's case, it is not for him getting to the lane and drawing 2 or 3 defenders. Cody Martin's not shooting 47% from the 3-point line. Gabe Vincent's not getting good looks. Duncan Robinson's still on the bench. Max Strus isn't starting in this league. Bam's not getting easy putbacks when he actually decides to go get putbacks. It's those little things. So I say Jimmy's between 8 and 10, because it's you still got to say you still got the 3-year, you still got Embiid, Joker, and Giannis in the top 3.
Right.
Steph Curry's still amazing at whatever age Steph Curry is until he can slow down. He is what it is, right?
Right.
And then after those guys, you have to really start looking at it. Jason Tatum was phenomenal this year. And if he didn't have that ankle injury in Game 7, we're talking about a completely different Game 7.
Probably.
Yeah. You mentioned Jimmy Butler. You're still talking Kevin Durant. No matter, it's still Kevin Durant. He's still that good of a basketball player. It is
Devin Booker's in the top 10 now. I think LeBron James is still considered top 10.
I mean, you still talk LeBron James. You still got to talk Damian Lillard because Lillard was phenomenal. And don't let the games fool you. Portland sat because they were trying to get that pick, and it ended up being in the top 4, top 3 picks. So they ended up winning at the end of the day. You still got Luka. You still got Shea SGA in Oklahoma City, who's literally flying up boards.
I don't think people appreciate the amount of talent we have in this league right now. This is by far the most talent we've ever had in the league at one time. Like, especially the fact today I'm actually going through my list of players I'm considering in my top 25, and I'm going through. I'm like number 31 right now. I'm like, wait, this guy could be top 25 too. I don't know. I got to figure it out. But there's so much great talent and so much elevated talent. And you still got guys who are still holding on, like LeBron and Steph and Durant, that are still considered top 10 guys.
Anthony Davis.
Anthony Davis. Guys who, and you have the Kawhis also too that when healthy, they're definitely in the conversation. Paul George, it's crazy.
Kyrie Irving.
Yeah.
Then you got the young guys. Anthony Edwards has got to be somewhere in the top 25. Anthony Edwards is a dog. You mentioned Devin Booker. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I'm not going to say LaMelo as a Hornets fan. I wouldn't say LaMelo Ball if he would have been healthy this year, but you can't have him on the list. But you still got to talk DeRozan. You still got to talk Zach LaVine. I'm big on Pascal Siakam, who doesn't get enough love and enough credit for how good he really is. Karl Anthony Towns. Like you mentioned, EJ, we can go on and on. We can probably come up with Jaylen Brown, even though he disappeared in Game 7. We can name off about 40 players you can say are 20, 45 players that are top 25 players, and I don't think there's much of an argument if you really put those lists together.
Yeah. Well, that being said, is Jokic one for you now?
I mean, I've had Jokic on the top of my board anyway. I know Embiid's the MVP, but Joker, we're talking about the best player in basketball. Not the most valuable player, but the best player in basketball is the dude that does the Sambo Shuffle, the guy that you look at him and be like, this dude is not a basketball player. He's the YMCA dude that's out there killing you on the court. He's not the fastest guy. He's not the most muscular guy, but I promise you, his basketball IQ blows anybody out of the water. It is what it is,
Yeah.
and he uses what he has to make himself great. I mean, that high arcing 3-point shot is just the Sambo shuffle is like literally that shuffle is like literally one. If you look at the most unstoppable moves in basketball, you can put it up there as one of the most unstoppable moves in all of basketball. Because what 7-foot guy can shuffle his back off his back foot? You know, we talk about the EJ. I watch football. It's like throwing off your back foot in the NFL. You don't throw off your back foot in the NFL. You don't shoot off your back foot in basketball. But this dude,
unless you Pat Mahomes, of course.
Yeah, but once again, and Nikola Jokic and Pat Mahomes are almost the same at this point,
right?
And he's doing it from that one he hit against Anthony Davis in his face, and AD's looking at the screen.
Game one, that was sick.
And AD's looking like, what am I supposed? On the one he hit in game 3, it was game 3,
right?
And at the end, I think it was at the end of the shot clock, and AD's looking sideline like, yo, I literally jumped in this man's face.
Yeah,
he shot it over me in a high rainbow arc for the 3-point line. Like, what more do you want from me?
Exactly. No, to me, it's Jokic and Giannis. You can, if you want to do 1v1B, is fine. I do think if if Denver wins the title this year, that's the separation.
Is it though? Because Giannis has already got 2 rings with 2 defensive players of the years.
True.
And he's got a ring with 2 MVPs, 2 defensive player of the years. I don't know if it's much of it. I think it's still the 1A to 1B.
Okay.
I think it's really your preference because Joker isn't that good on defense, but Giannis ain't that good of a shooter either. So it's like, okay, you're picking your it's like pens and needles. Like, you're right. I think it's 1A, 1B, and I think Luka's number 3 in the league. I think Luka's ahead of Embiid.
Yeah, I think a top 10 list. I think when you do a top 10 list next year, it's going to be complicated.
And also, I think when you look at also with the potential of moves in the offseason, it's also going to shift top 10 lists too, because this, to me, EJ, I'm going to say it now on May 31st, as we're recording this podcast, I think this will be the summer of the most traded superstars or all-stars we've seen in league history.
Wow, a lot of trades. This offseason?
I think this offseason is going to be, because the new CBA is going to throw monkey wrenches in everything. We're watching what goes on with Boston in the Jaylen Brown situation. Do you really believe in EJ in your heart of hearts? Now, we just finished watching the series. We watched the Boston Celtics for the last 5-6 years with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown together. Are those two worth $600 million or over $100 million a season against your salary cap? Because to pay both of them and keep them happy, you got to max both of them out.
Are they worth it on just no, they're not. However, they have a choice. They got to pay them.
But what happens is, if you pay them, guess what happens? There's no Derek Whites. There's no Robert Williams. There's no Malcolm Brogdons. There's no Al Horford type players. You can't have those, because guess what?
Yeah.
You're now filling your roster with G League guys, and you better hope that your farm system is the Miami Heat or the Toronto Raptors, because if it's not, then you're talking about a team that's going to win 45 games every year, probably getting their head kicked in the first and second round, because most of your money is spent between those two guys.
It's funny because I feel like this CBA thing triggered a lot of stuff that's happened this week. I think the Bob Myers thing, him leaving Golden State, has something to do with that as well too. I think he's getting ahead of. I think him leaving, he's talking about his family and all this stuff, and that could be true also. But I think he sees the potential chaos of Golden State about to come in another year or so, with having to figure out Draymond Green's contract this summer, had to figure out Klay Thompson's contract next year, had to figure out Steve Kerr's possible extension or not, he had another year's contract. I think he's getting ahead of the chaos that's about to happen in Golden State. I think the CBA is throwing a lot of monkey wrenches, like you said, along other things. You just mentioned though about names being traded this offseason. Give me 3 names out the shoot you see getting traded. 3 names out the shoot.
Karl-Anthony Towns. Jaylen Brown.
Jaylen Brown.
Mm-hmm. Trae Young.
Wow. Not surprised at all. Either 3. So let's do Jaylen first then. Does Boston offer him the Supermax?
See, so there becomes the $64 question, right? Because if you offer the Supermax, you can't trade it for 1 year. You're stuck with it for a year. So because the new CBA rules is players under supermax contracts, especially the 5-year ones, can't be traded for a full 365 days.
Mm-hmm.
So he can't be touched for the full season, the first full season after he signs that supermax deal. So here's where the money problem comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
It's 5 years, 295 million if he stays in Boston. If he takes the 4-year deal, it's 4 years at 224 million.
Right.
All right.
Plus he's getting 30 million trillion for next year.
Mm-hmm. But remember, here's the other part. If another team wants to sign him, it's 4 years at 184 million. So his best case is you guys stay in Boston because you lose a $100 million by going someplace else. So you must really want to get out of Boston to be able to turn down $100 million because that's what the CBA was doing.
But that's what I'm saying though, because here's the thing with the tea leaves. I've been discussing on the podcast now for a couple of weeks now about this. Like the tea leaves show you that Jaylen Brown does not want to stay in Boston. I mean, between the city, between the way he was treated, with the Kevin Durant stuff last summer, which all viable things. He's been on record saying those kind of things. He's uncomfortable with it. But the one thing Boston has as leverage is that super max. But whether or not you think whether or not he deserves it or not, if they want to keep him, that's what they have in the back pocket. Whether Brown takes it or not, that's the story.
Well, I mean, nowadays, EJ, guys take short deals to sign long deals, sign short deals. It is what it is. But in a situation like Boston, because here's where the real problem is. Okay, if you extend Jaylen Brown and pay him an additional $15-16 million a year, we don't know what the next television contract looks like.
Yeah, that's
and without the new TV deal in place, we don't know how big the salary cap is going.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, we can talk about the NBA's new TV deal. I can mention that real quickly. Everybody and their mother wants in. This is where it's coming to. Warner Brothers Discovery is potentially getting out of the NBA, which is Warner Brothers Discovery is TNT, which potentially could be either downsizing their package or getting out of basketball in general, which leads to who would take over if TNT left. Well, All-Star Game will go to ESPN. Makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
But guess who gets back in, EJ?
NBC.
NBC jumps back in. NBC jumps in along with Amazon.
Universal.
Or Apple.
Right.
Yeah, NBC Universal will now have NBA games somehow on USA, which will have to work around wrestling, but I'm sure USA will figure this out.
They'll figure it out. I mean, first wrestling is Monday, Tuesday, and send NXT back to the network if you have to.
I mean, or send NXT, or listen, you put NXT back on Wednesdays, because ESPN normally has Wednesday night NBA anyway. Right. You put NXT back on Wednesday and have them compete with AEW, and we can have the Wednesday night wars instead of the Monday night wars.
Right.
Yeah. And then you put the NBA on Tuesday nights on USA. TNT keeps a small little package on Thursday. ESPN gets it. But EJ, we get the most important thing as NBA fans back. We get Sunday basketball on NBC and Peacock.
My 10-year-old me is like all happy again.
and I'll be honest with you, EJ, what they could do is, and this to me, this is if I was running NBC, like if they gave me the power to run NBC for the basketball negotiations, here's what I would do. You're putting games on USA.
Yeah.
USA is getting Tuesday night basketball doubleheader on cable, and then we're going to figure out who we're going to put in the booth. Whatever. We got that. I'm also going to have games on Peacock because you got to get people to Peacock.
Right.
But after NFL season, after the Super Bowl, I'm getting everybody in the NBA in America basketball night in America on Sunday nights.
Mm-hmm.
I got Maria Taylor right there. I brought Maria Taylor in from NBC, from ESPN, who did NBA anyway, who wanted to have the handkerchief chair. You give me Maria Taylor on a Sunday night at 7 o'clock with basketball night in America with a Sunday game at 7:30. And the only difference compared to ABC, which does this all the time, which agitates me, is I'm not showing the same 7 teams all season.
Right.
Because the NBA struggles, and why we don't have a new fans anymore, because we watch the same 7 teams.
Yeah.
No one really knows about Denver and Miami because we get stuck on Saturday nights watching Golden State.
Although this series, hopefully the series changes the perception, though.
Yeah, but the problem is we don't. But even when we had Milwaukee and we had Phoenix 2 years ago, the next season, Milwaukee and Phoenix were barely even on ABC on Saturday nights. but they were just in the finals. The only time I think they were on was that Saturday night they played against each other.
Right.
Most times you're watching Steph Curry, you're watching LeBron James, you're watching Brooklyn, or you're watching the New York Knicks. That's what they pretty much give you on Saturday nights. We don't get to see a diverse group of teams. Memphis, we wanted to watch Memphis until John Morant can get his life together, and hopefully he does. We can't put Memphis on TV. Even though people want to watch Memphis, we can't put them on TV. We can't put New Orleans on TV because everybody wants to watch Zion, but we don't know if this dude's even on the court.
Yeah.
So how many marketable teams we have because no one makes these players marketable. EJ, on a Saturday night, I promise you, if we had, I would say Minnesota and Minnesota Denver on a Saturday night. Us as basketball fans, Anthony Edwards and Nikola Jokic, sign me up on a Saturday night.
All day, of course, all day.
Because we all know AEW Collision ain't gonna give us what we're asking for anyway. So guess what?
Even CM Punk returning, it doesn't matter.
Listen, it could be CM Punk, it could be BC Punk, it could be I don't know, punk music. It is what it is. I'm pretty sure we're talking about
exactly. That. No, of course.
But the NBA is missing that part. I think with negotiations, Amazon or Apple are going to jump in this because one of those two is taking lead pass. We already know what's coming.
Let me say this though: the TV deal is going to be probably huge. I'm sure. Do you see a scenario where the salary cap goes to $200 million?
I think it comes close.
Right now we're about 158, 160 now.
I'm thinking we get closer to 180.
Okay.
And that's still for a league that has 15 players on the roster.
It's a lot.
The average player is making over $10 million a season.
But again, if you have two players making $60 million per, that's 120 covered up there, and then you got to fill another $60 million. Yes, there's still not a lot of room, but it's room.
And so that's why EJ, I think during the draft in a couple of weeks, I don't think we see as many teams trading out of those lower first round draft picks. And I think you'll start seeing teams trying to acquire more second round picks because now the extra two-way spot comes into play because there's now 3 two-way spots with each team now. I think teams will start valuing the G League more because once again, you're going to have to start developing players because they have the cheap salaries.
Oh, you mean something Miami has been doing for the last 6-7 years now? Yeah, cool.
The same way the successful teams have been doing by developing the G League. Yeah. I think, for example, my Hornets, have 3 second-round picks this year. I can't see the Hornets not using those 3 second-round picks. They're picking 33, 37, 41. For me, in that draft room, they also have 27 as well, too. We know this. They got the second overall pick, and know it should be Scoot Henderson. But my thing is the important picks are 27, 33, 37, and 41. Why? Because if you hit on those picks, don't got to be superstars. But if they can give me legitimate quality minutes and play good basketball, that allows me to, when LaMelo's contract is up, I can go pay LaMelo Ball the money he deserves. When Mark Williams' contract goes up and he plays well, I can pay him. I can bring back Miles Bridges, and I have a team that I can build around. Right. And that's where the NBA is coming to. These days, these super team days of us all playing together, it's a choice. Either we're going to have what Phoenix has, and we saw what happened in the playoffs. They have no depth anywhere else because they gave everything away. Or you're going to have teams building like Miami, teams building like Denver, and that's where we're going to go. That's where the league is headed to. The days of the super teams, EJ, is either you're going to do it and have nobody, or you're going to rebalance your rosters out. And be honest with you, it might look more like the late 80s, early 90s pretty soon than it is currently.
I won't lie to you. I kind of like that, though.
I think so, too. I think, it's okay to have, what they have with Joker and Murray. You got a $40 million player and a $30 million player surrounded by a bunch of $20 million players. That's really a good thing to have because you have quality at all the positions. But you mentioned before, if my salary cap is $175 million and I got 2 guys making $120, $125 million, how are we going to win? Especially about draft picks.
So the 3 names you mentioned Cat, you mentioned Trae Young, you mentioned Jaylen Brown. I actually totally agree with you. I've been saying Jaylen Brown is a guy that if he doesn't want to stay in Boston, he's highly coveted. I said I'll take a Miami any day of the week, twice on Sunday. Him and Jimmy Butler together and put him Bam as a third option instead of the second option. That can propel them to be the best favorites in the Eastern Conference. What other names out there you can see being on moving this summer?
I think Trae Young.
Wait, your audio went out. Your audio went out real quick. Yeah, your audio went out. I don't know what happened. There you were.
Can you hear me now? Can
Yeah,
you
you're
hear me
good
now?
now. You're good now. Yeah.
Okay. I think Trae Young in Atlanta is one. And here's the reason being not because Trae Young is not talented. Atlanta's got DeJounte Murray, and they got to
Hmm.
pay DeJounte Murray, and they paid 3 first-round draft picks to get DeJounte Murray.
Oh yeah.
So at some point, is DeJounte Murray and Trae Young your answer in the backcourt? Is that the answer you're going to have going forward? Because
One year
DeJounte
sample,
Murray,
not good.
it was, but you got to give Quinn Snyder his chance. So I think maybe a Trae Young for Jaylen Brown swap could be an answer. Because Marcus Smart does. You can put Marcus Smart next to Trae Young because Marcus Smart can guard the guards, the better offensive players, and let Trae Young be Trae Young.
Right.
That could be one. I can see Zach LaVine getting traded sometime this offseason. There are teams that want Zach. I see Zach LaVine being somebody interested. I think DeMar DeRozan's another one. The big one everybody wants to see on the trade block is Damian Lillard. And I really would like to see if the Blazers can come off that third overall pick to give Dame what he's asking for before Dame, I think, hits the detonation button.
I don't think he wants to. I don't think he wants. I think they want to trade him. I think they want to trade him.
I think the Blazers want it. I think the Blazers really kind of want a divorce here.
Yeah.
I think Dame is the one that wants to hold on because Dame is a super loyal guy, and to no fault of his own. EJ, we talk about this. We want players to be like Dame Lillard. We want players to go down with the ship.
Yeah.
But Dame is 32 going on 33.
Yeah.
We're into Kevin Garnett, Minnesota territory here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you want to win a championship, this is the guy you're going to have to move. You're going to have to go someplace else because
You may have about 3 or 4 prime years left.
I mean, and you got to think though. In Portland, he's really carrying that team. So how much longer does he actually have? It's 3, 4, 5 years on a situation where he's in a better situation. But imagine how that's taken when you're carrying an entire franchise.
Yeah. Yeah, son of Miami. Son of Miami.
But does he? But EJ, you've been part of the culture. You covered the Heat. You've been in Miami for umpteen years. Yeah. Is Dame Lillard really? Could Dame Lillard fit in the Heat culture?
I think so too. I think his attitude alone would fit there. Absolutely. Him and Jimmy together. Oh my gosh. Yes. Of any star, of any top 15 star I see in terms of who can be loosened up to move from your team, that's the kid. That's the guy I'm looking at. Like, yeah, that could be that's a Heat culture guy there. Definitely, you can tell. But yeah, it's funny. Like we talk about, like the CBA. It's like this new CBA is. I mentioned Bob Myers, and him leaving the Warriors as general manager and president. I think it's getting ahead of the curb when it comes to the Warriors window. We didn't discuss this last time because at the time the Warriors were still in the playoffs. Next year is the all-in year for the Warriors at this point now. I think the last dance year is coming up. I think with Myers leaving 22 is the first crack in the armor. Now, look, Draymond can probably leave, opt out and leave this year, whatever. Maybe we'll see that happening. But I think the Warriors, I think Bob Myers got ahead of this thing a year early, or 2 years early, because I think he sees the chaos coming down here. We're in the Warriors now.
I think the chaos might happen this summer if Draymond Green opts out. If Green opts out, goes to the Lakers, and then I think here's the reason. I think Bob Myers, and I think you can never ever say as family men, EJ, because we're all family men. That we step away for our family because we want to spend more time with our family. We get it. But to me, this sounds like Bob Myers don't want the blood in his hands. He helped put this thing together. He don't want to take this thing apart. Nope. He doesn't want to be the guy that didn't pay Draymond Green or has to trade Klay Thompson or do both. He doesn't want to be the one that has to take apart Steph Curry's team. And you know what? I don't blame him. Okay. At this point, EJ, if Bob Myers were to go back into an NBA front office somewhere, do you know his big truck is going to back up to the size of Monty Williams if he wants to go someplace else? So you always remember for what you have done in every sport is to what have you done for me lately. Bob Myers left Golden State with what 3, 4 championships, multiple finals appearances, a team that has been literally the same. Basically in the championship running for over almost a decade. And the only year they weren't in the championship contention because Steph Curry got hurt and only played 5 games that year.
Yeah.
And then the second year, Klay Thompson was coming off an ACL injury, and Steph Curry could have won the MVP that year, but they just weren't that good.
Yeah.
So, and they had just lost Kevin Durant. So at the same time, Bob Myers is still the most sought after executive anywhere you're going to find. I mean,
he'll have carte blanche wherever he goes. He'll have carte blanche anywhere he goes.
Listen, there was a report today, EJ, that ESPN was after Bob Myers.
Yeah, I heard about that.
But I don't think it's for a television role.
What do you think?
I mean, listen, Bob Myers is a superly smart guy. He's a super smart executive. He has ties and relationships everywhere. We just watched ESPN pull off an $85 million deal for Pat McAfee.
Yeah.
You don't think that Bob Myers knows people who knows people who know people in this industry? Because, like I said, when you run the Golden State Warriors, you win championships, you come across many people. He's a leader. He's literally one of the best at what he does in all of sports, which is lead and being a super executive when it comes to sports. So why not take him to a sports leader to be the executive for sports? We've seen it done before. It doesn't sound logical, but when you think about it, the skill set's just about the same.
No, I agree. Why the hell would Houston want James Harden back? I don't get all that. This is Harden, Philadelphia, Houston triangle here. Like, I don't get it.
Well, Houston won't get the point guard they want in the draft. Scoot Henderson's going to be gone before they get to 4. That's the first answer to the question. 2, James Harden actually wants to be there. And it's very rare that all-stars want to actually go to a place that's been known for losing for years. James loves Houston. Houston loves James.
Apparently.
It's a love story that's just match made in all pure strip club love.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
James' family lives there. His mom lives there. He has ties to everything Houston. He is Houston. I mean, when it's all said and done, EJ, when James Harden decides to cut the beard and end his career and go back to looking like Oklahoma State James Harden will be the second greatest player in the history of the Houston Rockets when it's all said and done. He's number 2.
I can see that.
He's not.
One.
there's no until he puts banners up there, he ain't touching a key.
I agree with that. But if you're Philadelphia though, should you want him long term? I said no. I said I'm Philadelphia. I let him walk.
Here's the problem. Letting him walk means what are you bringing back in return because you're over the cap. See, there's a $64 problem.
Yeah.
I think firing Doc Rivers might save James Harden because James Harden being an offensive system with Nick Nurse is a little bit more friendlier when it comes to being in the half court more, which is more James Harden's type of style. I wrote about this on my Substack yesterday. Mm-hmm. One thing Nick Nurse does very well is he has very good attention to detail. One of the things that the Sixers have been completely terrible at, and a lot of people don't talk about, is the Sixers have been completely trash juiced when it comes to the offensive glass the last 2 years. Ever since Doc Rivers has taken the job, his first year when he had Dwight Howard and, of course, Joel Embiid and those guys, they were 13th in the NBA offensive rebounding. In year number 2, with Andre Drummond on the roster, who is literally 30 rebounds away from 10,000 in his career, EJ. He's about to be one of the few players in the league that's got 10,000 rebounds in his career. The Sixers were 30th in the offensive glass. 30th. This year, they were 27th in the league. And here's the difference. It was 0.1 rebound more this year than it was last year. If you really want to be different, the reason why they had more rebounds per game they did this year over last year is because teams were worse rebounding the ball this year than they were last year that were behind them. So enter Nick Nurse. The Toronto Raptors were second in the last 2 years in offensive rebounds per game. They were number 2 in offensive rebounds, which led to being in the top 3 in the NBA, EJ, in second chance or putback opportunities. Hey, you crash the board, you get more possessions. It's really simple basketball. Yeah. EJ, great stat. Counting Jakob Poeltl, because he did start 25 of the 26 games after the trade.
Right.
The Raptors had 8 guys that had averaged over 1.3 offensive rebounds per game. 8 players that played regularly. We're talking 50 plus games or more. So this ain't no guy that played 2 games. Like Mac McClung had 5 offensive rebounds in the game, and it was the only game he played all season. Or Lucas King.
Mm-hmm.
The Sixers had 4 players all season. 2 of those guys played played 10 minutes a game, which was Paul Reed and Montrezl Harrell.
Okay.
Neither one of those 2 guys played all season. Really, they didn't play much. But the Sixers don't rebound. Nick Nurse will be able to tell those boys to start rebounding, which means guess what? It takes less possessions on a defense. But the Sixers have a top 5 defense. So do you know how much more stingy that defense can be when you're giving the other team less possessions?
So you're saying that Nick Nurse coming to Philadelphia actually increases the chances of Harden staying?
I think it does, because here's the other thing. James Harden also, now one thing James Harden's got to realize is Nick Nurse holds players accountable. You better learn that from the very beginning. And B's going to learn that too. Nick Nurse will play you, and Nick Nurse will ride you. He's not afraid to make changes. He's not afraid to make an example out of you. So maybe James Harden might want to run to Houston. Accountability and James Harden might not seem to be the best sentence together.
I think the thing with Philly, like if you get Harden, I'm not opposed to Harden coming back. I just don't know if I can give him 4 or 5 years.
I mean, I think that's the other part, because other things around the league today was that if they don't get James Harden to resign, the Sixers are trying to pull off Fred VanVleet.
To him and Tyrese Maxey in the backcourt.
Him and Ty Maxey in the backcourt. And guess what? That reminds me a lot of having Kyle Lowry and Fred VanVleet in Toronto. It's just an other way around version. If the Sixers get Fred VanVleet, guess what? I know one thing: Freddie ain't scared to shoot.
Yeah,
Freddie is not scared of the moment. It's not going to be James Harden in the playoff series where he wants to dribble, then pass for 2 seconds of the shot clock. Oh, right. Fred gonna fire.
Yeah.
If one thing Fred VanVleet gonna do, he might not shoot the best, but Fred ain't scared to shoot.
But you do like the hire of Nick Nurse in Philadelphia, right? You do like the hire, right?
I think it was amazing. I think it's the best hire you could have made.
Right.
I think there's certain types of hires, right? Mm-hmm. When Philadelphia, when they got rid of Brett Brown got into the second round multiple years in the process. Okay, so what do? You fire a guy that won 50 games almost the last couple of seasons and got you to the second round. So your object was, okay, we're going to hire somebody that's better. Well, Doc Rivers was the guy. Rivers is the championship coach. He's been in the NBA Finals. He's an upgrade. Problem was, Doc Rivers upgraded him to the second round. So basically, it was a lateral move.
Yeah.
So what do you have to do? There's only 2 coaches that could have made this work, which was Mike Budenholzer and Nick Nurse. Nick Nurse is better with personnel and making changes more than Mike Budenholzer. Because truth be told, if Kevin Durant's foot was a size 9, Mike Budenholzer wouldn't have had that championship or a job, because they would have been out the door in Milwaukee. But Kevin Durant's foot was too big, and guess what? They won that series.
Good point. I'm trying to find other basketball things here. Joe Mazzulla survives, right?
I think. Here's the thing: Game 7 allowed him to survive. Jason Tatum spraining his ankle 30 seconds into the game allowed Joe Mazzulla to keep his job. Right. Because let's be honest, this is what kills me about Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown had every opportunity to be worth every single dollar. He's an all-star. Ironically, the guy on the other side of the court, Hemi Butler, that guy Hemi Butler over there, wasn't even an all-star. And Jaylen Brown was completely missing in that series clinching game. So Joe Mazzulla survives, but I think the seat is hot. Yes. Is extremely hot in Boston, because there's no way. And we found that Robert Williams was sick. Derek White sprained his ankle in the third. I think he hurt his ankle in the third quarter. So this team was just falling apart, and they got blown out. But I'll tell you this: don't let Joe Mazzulla get off to a slow start, because they'll fire that man faster than they did Avery Johnson in Brooklyn.
Yeah. So the last episode of this podcast, we threw a hypothetical. I had my buddy Danny G, who's a Boston native, and we threw a hypothetical. I asked him who would be the, let's say hypothetically Mazzulla gets fired. Let's say they decide in 2 days we're done. And I asked him who's the best fit out there for the Celtics, and he threw out Doc Rivers again. I'm gonna turn Doc Rivers.
Not with that roster.
Not that roster.
Not with that roster. Marcus Smart can't. Marcus Smart going through that again. Nah. Doc. Here's the one thing with Doc, and I'm going to say this, and I know Celtics fans are going to hate me for this, but Doc Rivers is overrated as a head coach.
I wrote a blog on this 7 years ago.
Doc Rivers has won. He has ran that one championship off, just like just like an artist who goes triple platinum
Yeah.
for their first album, and they're thinking every other project after that is supposed to be amazing. Doc Rivers, outside of that one championship in those couple years in Boston, what has he actually done since?
So like
Pre or post?
3-1 leads. How many?
He's lost more game sevens than any head coach in the history of the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
More playoff game sevens than any head coach.
But some really good teams too. In fact, that is like some slouches. There's some really good teams he had too.
No, he's had Hall of Famers in their prime and they couldn't win. And then I've been hearing about Doc in Phoenix. Is Phoenix really trying to blow? Is Phoenix really never trying to win? That's like the ultimate kiss of death. You have Kevin Durant, Chris Paul, and Doc Rivers. You're definitely not winning with those three guys.
No, man. Doc is Doc. Yeah, I understand, man. That's a. I don't know. I think Missoula survives. I think Missoula give him a free shake, hire some coaches. I just saw a report today though that Ime Udoka is taking 3 assistants down to Houston from Boston.
Listen, Udoka's got a hard job behind him too because he's got to get a whole bunch of young kids to follow behind him.
But he'll have autonomy to get it done. He'll have a lot of work time.
I think that's where you bring in James Harden, who is familiar with Udoka, if that's the guy you bring in a point guard.
Yeah.
Because one thing with James Harden is in this stage of his career, James Harden is a really, really good passer and a good point guard at this point in his career, right? There's moments where he's going to give you 30, 35 a game, but he's going to make the game easier for the younger players on offense. Because I think at some point, and I think I've watched enough of the Rockets to know that Jalen Green is ready to ascend. But I don't think he's ready to ascend with Kevin Porter Jr. as his point guard. And it's not a knock on Kevin Porter Jr. It's just that sometimes the fit between two players just doesn't work. But you put James Harden, who was thinking about pass first, Jalen Green turns into a 25-point-a-game scorer. I think James Harden could unlock what Jabari Smith struggled with as a rookie. I also think that Alperen Sengun, who I think is going to have a phenomenal year next year, I think he's one of my favorite players to watch. I mean, super under the radar. He's super talented. I think he's able to unlock, and he's going to have that next step. And truth be told, if that's your starting 4 or 5, if you put Tari Eason in that starting lineup, who I love, came off the bench for them this year, the Rockets are a fun team to watch at that point. And then you got the 4th overall draft pick, and can we get one of the twins? And then we really could have a whole big party out in Houston.
All right, so one last NBA thing. Finals. Which pick?
Nuggets and 6. No disrespect to the Heat. I think what happens is if Miami's going to strike blood, they're going to have to strike in the game 1 because it's going to be the layoff. It's going to be the rust factor. But the other part is the Heat have to play in the altitude. You got there on Tuesday because, like I said, your flight was head directly to Denver afterwards, so you really had a chance to touch the scale on Tuesday. You only had 2 days to prepare for the altitude, and if you remember the game correctly, Jimmy Butler did come down with a little bit of an injury, and so did Caleb Martin.
Yep.
How is that looking at a situation where Denver's going to run up and down the court? But listen, unlike the last series where you could put Anthony Davis in a rover position, Miami can't rover with Bam Adebayo in the series because if Kevin Love or Cody Zeller is guarding Nikola Jokic, it's going to be one of two things. It's either going to be Jokic is going to pinpointly destroy you, or Jokic is going to be shooting over either one of those two.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that the series comes down to 2 major things. Number 1 is going to be adjustments. And what we saw with Mike Malone in the last series was in game 1, the Lakers made an adjustment by putting Rui Hachimura on Nikola Jokic and letting Anthony Davis play free safety. So what did they do Mike Malone do in game 2? Well, Jamal Murray was struggling, and instead of sending out Nikola Jokic at the beginning of the fourth quarter like he always does, he had the Joker play the first 2.5 minutes of the fourth quarter, which allowed Jamal Murray to wake up and then basically systematically take down the Lakers. So those are the type of adjustments you make. Then he found ways to move Aaron Gordon around so Aaron Gordon can finally be comfortable in offense. Those are the things. Mike Malone's going to have to outcoach Eric Spoelstra, which I know is an entirely difficult task.
Yeah.
He's going to have to be able to counterpunch one of the best counterpunching coaches in the league. And I think Denver's I'd say teammate unit. I can't say role players because Jimmy said we can't say role players. I think Denver's teammates, Michael Porter Jr., Contavious Caldwell-Pope, Aaron Gordon, Bruce Brown. I think we'll even see 86-year-old Jeff Green. I think we might even see Christian Braun. And if we're really lucky, we might even get a Reggie Jackson sighting in the series.
Yeah.
I think those guys will outplay.
He's on that team?
Reggie Jackson hasn't. Yeah, he's on the team. Reggie Jackson.
I didn't know that. Wow.
He took Bones Highland's spot and never played. But I think they outplayed Miami's group because I don't know how much more can Caleb Martin give you better than what he did in that Boston series. If he plays anything like that Boston series, he might average 22-7 in the series, and Miami's really in trouble.
Right.
I'm not sure. I mean, Gabe Vincent, as good as Gabe Vincent is, Gabe Vincent can shoot Miami out of games because there was games in the series where he didn't do it. Max Strus, Duncan Robinson, the main three of those three guys is they have to knock down shots to be super effective. Unlike Martin, who was good from the floor, those guys really have to shoot the basketball. So they got to find Kevin Love too. Kevin Love is going to have to be in the series somehow. But I'll take Denver in 6. I'm confident. But I think Miami makes this a series, and I think this series is 10 times more entertaining than anybody will give it credit for.
Yeah, I already said on the record for like two straight podcasts, I am not giving a formal prediction because I'm done doubting my team.
It's your team. Just take them to win the championship.
But look, Denver's the better team. And I said this before.
So was Boston.
So was Boston. Was Milwaukee. So was and New York.
No.
Well, New York was the favorite in that series, though. Don't forget that.
New York the favorite in that series.
According to Vegas.
Let's be really honest here.
I mean, I picked New York. I mean 6, but I mean,
take your Heat hat off for a second, right?
No, I had Heat in 6 that series though.
New York is not that good until New York makes a move to go get, I would say, a top 20 player in the league. They're going to have to trade Julius Randle. Like, I think at some point, and that's a name I can see being traded this summer. And I'm going to tell you this: the Knicks are at the point now where a home run has to be hit here. And if I'm saying the home run, I think the Knicks should call New Orleans about Zion Williamson at this point. And because what do you have to lose?
And the Knicks right now, their stock is as high as it's ever been in the last 20 years. So you got to take a stab at it now while you can.
Yeah, just don't trade Jalen Brunson. That's all you do.
Oh, absolutely. Jalen Brunson is probably a top 25 player in the league now at this point.
Is he? Oof.
He's on the cusp. I mean, again, we're in a league now that's very talented now. That's I can't wait.
Jalen Brunson or SGA?
SGA. He's a better talent, more upside. But Brunson's like you know what Brunson is to me? He's like Chauncey Billups. He's just stable. He's solid.
Oh, Jalen Brunson, Trae Young.
Well, Trae Young's done more individually, conference finals.
If you're starting a team right now, EJ, I'm giving you a team, and you have these chances to start with these two guys. Who are you taking?
Honestly, probably Brunson.
Okay.
Because he's stability. He's definitely more coachable than Trae Young. I'll say that.
Okay.
You know, I mean, splitting hairs here, of course. Trae Young.
I'm saying talented. But that's how deep the point guard is. Well,
Trae Young is more talented. No one's in this question for Trae Young to be more talented, better shooter, all that. But Jalen Brunson is solid. He's just solid.
The intangibles.
Yes, and that goes a long way. Who Eric Spoelstra rather have? Jalen Brunson or Trae Young? Probably Jalen Brunson for the same reason.
Oh, Jalen Brunson, he coached way more than Trae Young.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point. He's coachable, and you can win more titles that way too with that guy. All right. Couple of wrestling things real quick. While you were doing school stuff, CM Punk was announced today on Dynamite. CM Punk is back.
Like we didn't know this.
The worst kept secret ever. Tony Khan's announcements every Wednesday. CM Punk.
My buddy posted today. He says AEW equals announcements every week.
Yeah, he's right.
But here's the thing, though. It was asked to Tony Khan on Sunday night when they had the AEW post recap. one of the post press
Double nothing
conference.
recap, right?
Yeah, press conference. One of the journalists asked Tony, "Yo, is CM Punk coming back?" Well, it was a great concept. I'm just not sure I'm gonna answer it this time, bro. You just gave it away. We all knew the first event is in Chicago.
Yes.
Like, come on, dude. Like,
let me say this real quick though about that. I've cooled off on AEW last year. Like I barely watch them week to week anymore. I follow, obviously I follow what's going on, but I have not watched engaged in AEW in the same way that I did the first 2-3 years of the company. That being said, I'm not gonna lie to you. This collision show and this possible brand split they're gonna be doing, like similar to WWE, I'm kind of intrigued. I think I'll be back on watching regularly starting this summer.
I think with the split, right? Because they have so much talent because we don't have Dark, we don't have the other shows that
Thank God.
showcase them. But the thing was, those shows did have a purpose though, because
Yeah, of
that
course.
allowed the roster that Tony had let overblown itself because he wants to open the checkbook up to bring every single wrestler and their mother into the building.
Mhm.
It kind of hurt it allowed AEW to not feel it. The issue I have with AEW is this: every time a free agent's out there, Tony Khan's trying to get him. It's very WCW ish. Okay. Also, I wasn't a big fan of the storyline. Now, mind you, the main event on Sunday night with the Elite and the Blackpool Combat Club was really worth the watch. That was worth the watch.
I've heard it's one of the few matches that was actually great.
It was a really, really good match. I mean, listen, anytime you have 8 wrestlers going through the entire building to do what they need to do, the only other match that was done correctly definitely was the very first Stadium Stampede during COVID.
Right.
When they were just all through Jacksonville,
that was
PA. That was amazing. I was watching that the other day. The rest of the card was just all right. The MJF match, I think I was in my group chat and I said the concept of the 4 pillars of AEW was a brilliant concept. A brilliant concept. You put the 4 wrestlers that AEW built itself around when AEW was at Daly's Place in the middle of the pandemic. We're watching a press conference outside of Jacksonville's stadium, and it was a whole bunch of wrestlers we don't know about, but this is what they built around. The execution of it was very Charlotte Hornet-esque. It wasn't executed very well. It really wasn't. It's my team, I can say it.
Yeah, of course.
But it wasn't executed very well. It just really wasn't. And the match itself, even though MJF could really put on a show, do you realize that Roman Reigns has wrestled more this year than MJF has?
And that's saying something because Roman Reigns has wrestled a lot.
MJF, I was looking at his stats when they was going to the ring. He's 3-0 this year.
And we're now entering June, right, as we speak. Like in 10 minutes.
He's wrestled 3 times this year. What?
To be fair, though, it keeps it special, though, some degree. It's kind of Hoganish in the 80s, Hoganish.
Yeah, but Hogan in the 80s wrestled more than this.
Well, because of house shows, that's why.
But even on television, even on the limited amount of television we had in the 80s, Hogan still wrestled more than MJF. And there's a weekly show.
Yeah.
And
pretty bad.
Mind you, now MJF's post presser, where they asked a question about WWE and seeing Tony Khan's response when he was like, "Yeah, I know Nick wants me, Triple H wants me, I know WWE wants me," and you just see Tony Khan looking like, "Dude, I ought to knock you through next week," was priceless. But there's one change.
You think that's wait? You think that's all a work? The whole thing with MJF and shorting WWE and his contract. Is that a work? You think?
I don't think so. I think we're really gonna have a bidding war next year. I really think we're. I think we are, because here's the thing: MJF is the Miz on steroids. Like, I think if the Miz was able to take and run like he did at one point, this is what MJF is. MJF is allowed to be and say who he wants to be, and there's no changing it. I think if he does decide to go to WWE where the money is, even a bigger paycheck than what Tony Khan's giving him, then I think he goes with the full Cody Rhodes career control type of thing. But one interesting match I did see this weekend was the TBS Championship match.
Yeah.
With Jay Cargill winning and then losing to Chris Statlander.
Right.
She got to 60. had an amazing entrance where she used the AKA her sorority.
Right, I saw that.
I'm sorry, sorority incorporated. I got to put that in there before the AKs come fight me.
Mm-hmm.
But the amazing entrance. She ends up winning the match, but she ends up having open challenge right afterwards. And then Chris Statler comes in and pins her. I want to see what happens with Jade Cargill next because I'm sorry, she elevated the TBS Championship to be something worth watching. Is it time to put the belt on her? With Jamie Hayter out for an extended period of time, they put the belt back on Tony Storm and it's not interim.
Yeah.
Is it time to pull the trigger on Jade and let her run the place?
Well,
because Britt Baker said she don't want it.
Well, what I heard today, I don't know if it's true or not. Dirt sheet stuff, of course. It could be true or untrue. Is that Jay's on a hiatus, but going to hiatus a little bit. That's what I heard. I'm not saying it's true or not.
I mean, it could. I mean, she's owner of a baseball. She's owner of a softball team.
Yeah.
She's been doing a lot. She has a daughter. She has a wonderful fiance, Brandon
Phillips.
And Phillips. Yeah, great people. I saw Jade in Atlanta a couple weeks ago when they were at the symposium. That was about a month or two ago.
Yeah.
She's everywhere, and for someone to be a heel, she does work like a face. She's out in the public and community like a face. So maybe she's had a meteoric rise. But I wonder, is the acting bug or those things might hit her since you say she's taking a hiatus? Maybe she's playing a Storm. Maybe she gets
true. Here's what I will say about Jade though. Like, she's very green in the ring still. Very green. But
is she green? Because I think she's gotten a lot better. She's a lot better than she once was. When she did the program with Chris Statlander, when she did the program with Tyra Valkyrie, she really see that she has grown a lot.
Right. I feel like it's probably marginal at best. I mean, I don't think she's horrible, but I do think the character though is so over and very popular, and that matters. And that matters also on social media too, when you get attention to the product. That yes, you have to elevate her to a world title. You have to.
I think it's time. And when I say it's time, be honest with you, the AEW World Women's Championship picture has not been paid attention to because they bring Saraya back in, and what Saraya doesn't really wrestle on a regular basis. When Ruby Soho showed up, this should have been Ruby Soho's division, but they never pulled the trigger.
No,
on giving her a title run.
They really dropped the ball on Ruby Soho, honestly. They really.
And then when Athena showed up, they dropped the ball with her. They've dropped the ball with every major person.
But that's a Tony Khan. That's a Tony Khan problem, though. That's bad booking.
It is, but my point is the AEW Women's division that has so much talent really doesn't really have as much talent as we think it is. Because Tyra Valkyrie came in, and guess what? They basically kind of put her in a mid-card role from the very beginning.
Yeah, but it's also hard to evaluate talent when you only put one women's match a week on a fucking show. I mean, you have to showcase the talent.
You're giving them WWE time. What do you think the women complain about? The divas complained about. Give us more time. And when the WWE gave the women more time, guess what happened? People started paying attention.
They also don't have the same situation like WWE. They have a performance center and all that. I don't think AEW has something equivalent to that. Having a
no, they're spending money. They're spending money in the video game that comes out this month.
The money should be spent on developing their talent. They have it on the roster and get them better.
Well, that video game.
The video game will be the video game when it comes out. But I need to spend more time on the roster and getting their talent better.
Well, I'm saying because the game was I think it was like almost $80 million over budget.
Yeah, ridiculous.
So that video game better sell to open that facility.
You think it will?
No,
I don't think it will either.
I
don't care.
WWE games don't hit seven figures in sales.
Right.
So if for a game that's it was $60 to $80 million over budget. EJ, you're talking about that game has to sell at least 1.5 million copies for you to break even.
And it won't.
There's not Chris Jericho and Dale and Brian Danielson, John Mox. Those guys enough can't save the game. And I'm sorry, I saw the character model of Eddie Kingston 2 days ago.
Yeah, I did too.
I would have asked for my money back at that point.
Absolutely.
And I ain't by the game yet.
Yeah, wasted investment there by Tony Khan, of course. One last thing to get you out of here. One last thing. Night of Champions this past week also. Great show. Yep. You saw the cracks in your armor, the bloodline continue to crack. Jimmy Uso turns on Roman. I guess my question is this though, going forward. Um, how would you book the next rest of the summer? Because I think there's a lot of things here in play that can play out really big way by SummerSlam. You have Money in the Bank coming up next month. You still have SummerSlam in August. How would you book some of these big storylines going forward?
I think at Night of Champions, you're probably going to have to run. You could probably run a rematch for the tag team title match again because of the Usos' interference. You probably could run
Yeah.
a rematch. Reigns has to put the belt on the line at SummerSlam at this point. I
Rhea?
think it. I think you have to. Reigns has to finish the chain because you listen. You can only give Roman so many tag team matches to keep the heat off of him.
Yeah.
But I honestly think this might be me. This might be some fantasy booking. But listen, we watched the show down in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
We saw what Bad Bunny did in Puerto Rico, which I think to me is still the greatest celebrity performance of all time.
Oh, it's awesome.
I think the same way they did in Crown Jewel with Jake Paul, or with Logan Paul, Jake Paul, RuPaul, I forgot which Paul it was in that ring. I think Bad Bunny, you put Bad Bunny in that place in Detroit, you're automatically going to sell the building out.
Yeah.
Right? Bad Bunny is a good enough wrestler, a good enough performer that he can pull this off. Because here's the thing. We all know that the belt ain't coming off Roman no time soon.
No.
And I don't think that Jimmy. I don't know if you put Jimmy in that championship match. I know Jay. He lost. I think Jay beat him to start the. He beat Jay to start the whole bloodline thing.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't have Jimmy lose to Roman and have both Usos lose to Roman to continue the empire. I think that honestly, if we don't go the Cody Rhodes route, which probably is going to be the answer to the equation, which at this point I'm over it. At this point, the one that could end the bloodline is Sikoa
Against Roman?
Against Roman.
But I mean, yeah, but that's assuming that you think Sikoa is the next guy in line to fall apart with, split with Roman. I think with Cody,
because they're super. Because you got to look at the relationship between the Usos and Sikoa. I mean, they're tighter than what Roman. When you go on social media, you see the three of them together. You don't see Roman with them. When Sikoa got married in Orlando, about 3-4 months ago, his two best men were the Usos.
Wow, I know that.
So yeah, so if you go on Instagram, I know we don't do the Instagram thing, but they're on Instagram. Those wedding photos, they were there with the wedding photos. I think they're first cousins. They grew up together. They grew up together. So I think that when you see Jimmy and Jay looking at their cousin, who looks like their little brother, or they treat like a little brother, listen, the Samoan spike might happen to Roman, or Sikoa might end up winning the Rumble. Obviously, at this point, if they didn't pull the trigger on Cody and they're trying to build this whole big storyline that Cody gets the crap kicked out of him by everybody between now and WrestleMania, at this point, if he didn't do it when he first got here, what is Philadelphia going to do?
Right. I think in case of Cody, he
should have been on Raw. He should have been on Raw with the belt on Raw. He shouldn't be chasing Roman. That's what shouldn't happen. But I digress.
I think the Cody Brock thing is really cool. I think you end that feud at SummerSlam. The arm injury gives you some time to skip Money in the Bank. You put Brock in a Money in the Bank match. Have Cody screw Brock. They have a rematch. Have the rematch at SummerSlam and Hell in a Cell. Call it a day there.
And then you let Brock go on his merry way, go back home and go ride horses. So you have to call him back again at the Rumble.
Right. Exactly. I mean,
but then here's the question. Now that we've broken the bloodline up, right? It's essentially broken. We're going to go to Survivor Series in November. You don't have the bloodline sitting out there anymore. How are we doing Survivor Series now?
I've been saying for years, man, treat Survivor Series like a normal pay-per-view. It's even special. Make it the fall classic. That's all. Make it like, a big match here, and then make it a regular card. I this idea that Survivor Series has to be the way it was in 1987, 1988 with the Strive to Survive thing, when you've already gone away from that many times over, just make it a regular fucking fall classic.
Well, the thing was, but EJ, but the 87 through 95 Survivor Series were all classics because the way that because think about it, it was the one time a year where the where Hulk Hogan didn't have to defend the championship. It was still the main events.
Yeah, but at the same time though, like
It's like
the
war games. It's like war games. You know,
yeah,
you do it's the WWE's version of war games without putting it in the cage. Now that we have it, it is what it is.
they make war games then. Do something with it. But I mean, you have options.
Yeah, but I kind of miss the old 4-on-4 Survivor Series because that's the Survivor Series
I'm
I
not saying
knew.
not do that, but I think they make it a they seem to not have for some reason for a big four, they seem to have a problem finding a right formula or a consistent formula to making that thing that event more palatable for people to watch.
Well,
I don't know what it is. I don't get it.
I think the fact that we've done Raw versus SmackDown, we've done this, we've done that, we've done brand splits, we've done all this other
Yeah,
stuff. I think we should just bring back the WCW Mayhem cage and have just everybody on top of a cage and
do
just work
something.
their way down. But no,
I mean, you've had title matches. You've had Hogan's Taker on there for. You've had Shawn Michaels against Bret Hart, the Montreal Screwjob. You've had massive matches on there too, massive cards. Maybe mix it up. Maybe have a couple of 4-on-4 matches, but mix it up. It's not even bigger than it has to be. It sells itself. Survivor Series.
I got a question for you. What's your thoughts on Bianca losing the belt?
Um, I'm okay with it actually. I'm not surprised either because I said on my preview podcast that it's possible that she lose the belt because she's gotten stale. They need to reheat her again. She's got a little stale.
Do we turn her heel?
I've been saying it for the last 6 months. It's a matter of when at this point.
But the thing is it the right move to turn her heel because of what she sells in merch, what she does for in the she is the female John Cena at this point.
She really is. But the thing is, though, do you want people to get sick of her to the point now where you're forcing her down our throat? Like you see with Roman. Like I mean, I'm not saying it's the same thing with Roman, but with Roman, people got tired of it, and it took a pandemic for them to pull the trigger on that, and it's worked to perfection. With Bianca, here's the thing with Bianca. Yes, she's like Cena, but there is precedent for her being healed for in NXT, and she was great at it.
But the thing is, do you have a big enough face to replace it? Are we putting Becky Lynch back as a face?
Yeah, why not? Why not? She's ready.
Because
She's ready to tweener at best anyway. So
I mean, Becky. I guess Becky and Seth are the same type of characters. I don't know. I knew it was time to take the belt off of her. Maybe Bianca, and then somehow she goes on this tear and probably wins the Rumble for a second time or third time. It's going for Charlotte to put the belt back on her at Mania. But I think at some point, right, the WWE is going to have to make the call back to Mercedes Moné at some point.
it'll happen soon. She got hurt though, I know that, but
I mean, she's hurt right now, and obviously Tony probably wanted her in for the London show. I'm sure he probably wanted her because, as we all know, AEW is using the London show to basically hire everybody and their mother to make sure that place sells out.
mm-hmm.
It is what it is. But as much as I like watching Mercedes wrestle in New Japan, she's not a New Japan wrestler.
No, she's a WWE wrestler.
We need Sasha Banks back on the mic because guess what? If anybody can do the face to heel turn, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's Sasha Banks.
I agree.
And no person that can put it over is you have a match where Bianca comes as face, Sasha comes as heel, and then you reverse it, and they both take off going the opposite way.
And not only that, you turn Bianca heel along with her with a lot of the profits also too.
But see, that's the other part. I can't see Montez Ford as a heel.
I could.
Could you?
Yeah.
I can see Dawkins as a heel, but Ford?
Yeah. I can see it. Well, at the very least, they need to reheat her. If you're not going to turn her heel, fine, but then put her in chase mode. There's value in the chase, man.
Well, I think they're going to put her back in chase mode. I think we got to give Asuka a good 5 or 6 months run as champion. Like,
Yeah, give her a nice little run.
Yeah. I think Asuka should go through SummerSlam. She should go through Survivor Series. she should probably go through the Rumble at this point, or at least get to the Rumble as a champion.
I will say, if anything, too. Also, if you want to give Bianca a little bit of a break off TV for a couple months, it wouldn't be the worst thing. Also, too, make her appreciate it.
I mean, and I appreciate it. I think she deserves it. I mean, like you said,
Oh,
she's one.
I'm
She's
not saying
carried
I'm not saying more like to to avoid oversaturation. In other words, sometimes you have to kind of keep people thirsty for you a little bit to appreciate.
Or do you find a way that Asuka can like injure her and get her off TV for a bit?
Of course, they could have done that this week at Night of Champions.
No, you can't do it in Saudi.
Well, it's too late now. You can't do it now. So
No, but I mean, I think even the point, I don't think you pull that trigger at Saudi.
Right.
I think you pull that trigger stateside because, to be honest with you, as great as that moment was when the Usos turned on Roman in Saudi, imagine that would have been at Money in the Bank or something like that in front of the American crowd. No offense to the crowd overseas, but imagine that pop that would have been if it would have been a different environment, because we've seen pops this year that have gone through the roof. Sami Zayn's pop in Montreal.
That thing, by the way, that pop he got at Saudi last week made me tear up for the record.
I mean, you know what though, because I'm glad that Sami was able to do it. I was glad that everybody involved allowed the moment to happen the way it was. It moment happened the way it should have, and the fact that he spoke Arabic was just the icing on the cake.
Amazing. I teared up. It's amazing. So, yeah, I think DW has a nice little 8-week run here of good stuff coming up. I think I'm looking forward to it. One more last one to get out here. I know it's a little late for you. Just reported earlier about 2-3 hours ago, Shannon Sharpe and Skip Bayless, Splitsville after the finals. Finally, thank God. I love Shannon.
Well,
I can't stand Skip.
I know. I think Skip. I think the winner. You know who the winner of all this is?
Who?
Stephen A. Smith.
Yep, I agree with that 100%.
Because now First Take wins. Undisputed is done at this point.
Yeah.
There's nobody you can put in that chair with Skip Bayless that can replace Shannon Sharpe.
No.
None.
Stephen A's only one, and that ain't happening.
Skip Bayless's Q status has just gone down the roof. But I'll tell you this: besides Stephen A. Smith, I think that Shay's already got a deal in place.
ESPN, anything?
I think it's Amazon.
Oh.
I think Club Shay and Amazon are about to get. I think they're about to come in together. As we've watched, Amazon's podcasting has their daily shows have gone up.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine what Shannon Sharpe brings to an audience if he goes over there? They already have Carrie Champion. They already have the other shows they have throughout the day.
Do you watch the content in there? Do you watch the stuff in there?
I do. It's very good content. Amina Hussein, who's in charge of everything at Amazon, has put an amazing team together on on that side. Now they just need the actual sports to go along with it. We're talking more than just NFL. You need to have other sports throughout the year to kind of complement the programming. Have these sports shows talk about the things that happen daily, other than the NFL, because it's where Amazon is. That's why I say Amazon should be part of the NBA in some sort of way.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it was time. It was been time that Shannon left the show. The show had gotten really stale and ski. I can only go take more.
Well, not only that, but I think also too. I like Shannon a lot. I think Skip. I thought it worked for a little while because I thought Shannon and Skip was okay for a little while. But Skip is just. I think the jig is up on Skip now. I think people have not realized that. I think he's like. I think Nick Wright's the best talent on the FS1 roster, honestly, even more than Skip Bayless.
But Nick Wright's takes sometimes make it to the point where I can't watch him all the time either. He's a great. I think he does a great job as a host, but some of the takes are just so outlandish.
Not as bad as Skip's though. Skip's the worst.
Yeah, but Skip's paid to be outlandish. That's why they have the afternoon time slot. But like I said, I really wonder with Undisputed now essentially over after the finals, how is Fox going to be shaped? It's like, what can you do? Are you going to put Acho in the chair with Skip Bayless? What personnel are you going to put in the chair of Skip Bayless, or are you going to kill Undisputed in general?
That's a good question.
Skip Bayless. I would have said Skip Bayless and Tom Brady, but I don't know if that's going to happen either.
Who knows, man? And that's
some good television.
All right, DT, plug in. Anyone to plug? I need a Substack. You have a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, check out more on the Wonderful World of Data on Substack. I will have something hopefully tomorrow before Game 1 of the Finals. I want to do it. I'm going to have a numbers version of the NBA Finals. Just give you some great tidbits and numbers on some advanced data analytics. Also, check out my work at 3pointconversion.com. Also, whatever podcast I decide to pop up, follow me on Twitter at DANNY 3 Thompson on Twitter. And wow, EJ, we have now gone into June 1st, which is the best day of the year.
NBA Finals is here.
Nah,
is in.
it's not, because EJ, guess what? You're the first person I talked to on my 40th birthday, by the way.
Oh shit! Really? Oh my god! Happy birthday, buddy!
I just turned 40. I turned 40. I was 30. I started the show at 39 and ended at 40.
That's awesome. Happy birthday, buddy!
Appreciate it, my guy.
40 years old. I remember those days. I'm 43 now. So
listen, I heard the 40. I heard the food's good in the 40-40 club. So
yeah, it is good. It's pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty good. 40's better than 30s, honestly. I like the 40's better than 30s, honestly. So no big deal.
It is what it is. What it is, sir. But no, it's always a pleasure, EJ. And I enjoy doing your pod when I have the opportunity.
It's awesome. I appreciate having you on the show, man. Definitely.